Hello there everyone, it's Carol here from the Crafty Emporium. Yesterday I posted a video of a flip through of this little mini album stroke journal that I created, and I said that I would come back today and come and give you a basic instruction on how I went about making it. Now, one of the things that I'm not going to do is I'm not going to show you how to decorate it, and there are a couple of reasons for that. The first one being is I don't know what papers you're using, so I could be showing you something that completely doesn't work for the papers that you're going to be using. The second reason is, and I see this so often, not only on my own Facebook group but on others as well, in that people don't have enough confidence in themselves and their abilities. So I'm almost setting down a little bit of a gauntlet, a little bit of a challenge for you to just have a look through to see what you've got, see what you want to use and see what you can create. It's all about your own confidence and believing in yourself. Of course, the other thing that I see a lot of as well is that a lot of people get disappointed and they compare their work to other people's. And that's a shame as well, because we're not all meant to be the same, you know. We all have our own idea of what looks nice and what doesn't. So someone else might create something and think it looks absolutely beautiful, and I might think it looks awful. And vice versa. I might create something and you guys out there might go, oh God, that Carol, the choices in that aren't very good. So it's all about your own taste as well. So I'm just going to show you the basics of how to make the folder, and then how you decorate it is entirely up to you. So let's go into the materials that I used. So you need a piece of really firm card. So I've got a 300 GSM card here. Sorry, I don't know what that is in pounds. You'll have to go and have a look. But this is a really firm piece of card, and this is to create the hinges. So you need something of weight to be able to support the weight of the pages that you're going to be attaching to it. The second thing that you're going to need is obviously your decorative papers, which will make up your pages. So I used Artie Maze's Old Time Christmas digital kit, and this was the paper that I used to create the pages within the album itself. This needs printing onto a relatively firm card, so not just copy paper. So this needs to be on anywhere towards a 160 to 200 GSM card. So again, it's got a little bit of weight and a little bit of support about it, so that if you're adding photographs on there or some writing text on there, it's got enough weight within the page to be able to support whatever you're going to adhere to the actual page itself. The third item I'm going to use is a file folder, and you need a file folder that has got the tab at the top up here. Now, as you can see, this file folder that I've got has actually got the tab down the bottom. And if I open it up, you can see that this would be the front, so it's the shorter side, and the longer side is at the back with the tab on, but it's at the bottom instead of being at the top. So of course you automatically think, well, if I just flip it over, then the tab's at the top. But now the tab is on the outside, on the front, and not on the back, and I actually want it on the back. And the way to get around doing that is to actually open up the file folder and actually fold it in the opposite direction. So now I've got the shorter side on the outside, on the top piece, and then I've got the tab is up here at the top. Okay, so that's if you haven't got the one with the tab at the top. Now I'm going to cut this down to size, and I actually want to measure it so that it's 5 3/4 inches deep. So if I unlock that, put that in, and 5 3/4. Make sure I'm all nice and square. And then I can cut that off. Now, having made that measurement, you can now see I've got 2 pieces, and I could actually make a second one out of this bottom part. It just means that I won't have the tab on here unless I use my envelope punch board to cut out a tab and then trim off a little bit of the excess. The other thing that I'm going to do whilst I've got my paper trimmer out is, hopefully you can see this, if I pull that back piece back, you can see I've got this extra little bit here, and I'm just going to trim that off so that I've got one nice long straight edge here. So I've now got my file folder ready. I just need to now add the spine. Now, most people would think that you're going to use these already pre-scored pieces here. I'm not actually going to do that, because if I use one of those and fold it so that I'm using those creases, as you can see, it's going to take this front edge much further away from this back edge, and I don't want it to do that. So I'm actually going to flip it over, and I'm going to create the spine on this back edge down here. And I'm going to score it at 3/4 of an inch from this centre fold. So if I line this centre fold with any measurement along the edge up here, butt it up against this top edge, go to 3/4 of an inch away from that centre fold line and score down, flip it over and do the same again on the other side. So there's the centre fold, there's those ridges that are already pre-scored, and that's the new score line that I've created on the back side. So now I'm going to fold that over and make sure that it's all nicely lined up. So then when I open it up, I've now got the spine, and this is still near enough this back edge here, but it's still got a little bit of space across there. Now at this point I would cover the front, I would cover the back, and I would cover the inside parts of the file folder with the papers that you're going to use. Now, as you can see, you've got this funny little lip bit here, and what you can do is you can cut your paper to size, and then once it's cut to size, slip it underneath, and then just with a pencil just draw around that little bit there, that funny little lip, the same as if you do it with this backside piece with the tab on. Cut your paper to size that wants to go on here, place it down on top, and then draw around that part there, and then you've automatically got those specific shapes that are on the front and the back cover. Once you've drawn those lines onto your paper, cut on the inside edge of the pencil line. So if you imagine that that's your pencil line, you're going to cut on this side of it and not this side of it, because you want it to be just fractionally smaller so that you end up with that little border going around it. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to create the hinge system that will sit on this spine area here. So now we come to make the hinge system for the actual pages, and as I said, I'm using a piece of card, and I'm using a green card because it complements the colour of the pages that I'm using. But this piece of green card is 300 GSM, and it measures 5 3/4 inches deep, so it's the same height as the file folder itself, and it actually measures 4 3/8 inch wide. It doesn't matter if it's slightly wider because we're going to trim it down into individual strips anyway. So if you get your pen and paper to hand, and I'll talk you through the measurements, although I am actually going to show you my instruction notes that I've written for myself at the end of the video so that you can pause it and make a note for yourself. So I'm going to cut 3 strips. The first one is 1.5 inches wide. That's the first one. The second one is going to be 1 3/8. 1, 2, 3. I'm chuckling because I've just reminded myself of a little verse we used to say as kids. 1, 2, 3, Johnny ate a flea. Can't remember the rest of it. So 1 3/8. So that's the second one. And the third one is going to be 1 1/4 inches wide. I'm just questioning myself for a minute. So you should have one that measures 1.5 inches, correct. One that measures 1 3/8. Hang on, let me just double check that. 1, 2, 3, yeah. And the third one, that should measure 1 1/4. 1 1/4, correct. So those are my 3 strips, and I'm now going to put them into my score pal and score them. Sorry about that, my mum found. So the widest strip, which is 1.5 inches wide, yeah, she cut me off, bless her. So we're going to score this first one at 1/2 inch, and then at 1 inch, and you're going to score all the way down, and then you're going to flip it over, do the same on the back side at 1/2 inch and 1 inch, and then you will fold and burnish each of those score lines. Okay, so that's our first hinge now made. The second hinge, which is the 1 3/8 inch wide strip, we're going to score at 1/2 inch and 7/8 of an inch. So 1/2 inch and 7/8 of an inch. Flip it over and do the same on the back side there. So 1/2 inch and 7/8 of an inch. And again, we will fold and burnish those score marks. So that's the second one done. And the third one, which is your 1 1/4 inch strip, we're going to score it at 1/2 inch and at 3/4 of an inch. And again, flip it over and score again at 1/2 inch. And the reason why I'm doing it on the front and the back is that it just helps to break the fibres down of the card because it's so thick, and it just helps to prevent any cracking if you've already scored it on both sides of the card. So again, we're going to fold and burnish those score marks. So that we end up with the 3 hinges like so, and then they will sit on top of each other. So 1, 2 and 3, so they'll all sit together on top of each other. Now then, the thing that I did different on mine, and if I just show you what I did, was on the second lot of hinges, I actually added it so that the tags could swing individually. Now the way that that happens is The first hinge we leave as it is, and the smallest hinge we leave as it is, but the middle one we're actually going to cut it in half. Now, I'm not going to get my paper trimmer out again, I'm just going to do it by eye. So I'm just going to cut it in half so that the height is reduced. Okay, so we've now got that in 2 pieces. That's 1 piece, that's 2 pieces, and that's a full piece. Okay, so we're now going to stick them into the file folder itself, and I'm going to use my Tombow multi-purpose glue. So on the back side of the hinge, I'm going to put some glue around that base piece, and then I'm going to sit it on that spine area, and it should fit nicely inside that spine area. So you need to centralize it up a bit so that there's a little bit of a gap from the fold line on this side, and there's a little bit of a gap from the fold line on this side, so that it sits in the center, but it should reach the top and the bottom edge of the file folder. So I'm just going to put a bit of pressure on there, make sure it's stuck down. Now I'm going to attach these 2 smaller pieces on. So again, I'm going to fold it up as I've burnished it, turn it over, put some glue on the back, and then that will sit on top of that first one, and again in the center of the fold marks, so that there should just be a little bit of space on each side, and I mean a tiny bit of space on each side of where the score marks are of this first one. And then put this second piece on. So it should butt up to its original piece. And then we're going to put the narrowest one on top of that. Now this has also been known as, I think it's stack the deck hinges. I think that's what it's called. Correct me if I'm wrong. And then that will sit in the centre of that one. So again, we've got that tiny space between each of the score lines of the previous hinge. I'm just going to sit that in the middle and just apply a bit of downward pressure to make sure that they're all stuck together. And then I should have all my hinges there. I'm not going to move them too much at the moment because I want to make sure that that glue sets off. But I've got all the hinges, which is where I'm now going to attach all the pages. So again, just to give you a close-up of what it looks like. So now we come to the pages. Now the size of the pages is all going to be dependent on the size of the folder that you've used. But if we just have a look, my pages measure 7 3/4 inches wide by 5 1/2 inches high. Alright, so that's what size I'm going to cut them to. Now, for us in the UK, we use A4 paper size, and I can get 2 pages out of 1 sheet of A4 paper. What I've actually done, because I'm using the digital kit, is I've printed on the front and also on the back. What I need to do first, because my printer doesn't do borderless printing, is I just need to trim off those little outside pieces first. So I'll trim those off. And then that gets rid of those. And then I can cut it down to size. So I need my page size to be 5.5 inches long and 5.5 inches deep and 7 3/4 inches long. So I'm actually going to cut that way around, Carol. No, that way around, Carol. We'll get there in the end. 7 3/4. Yeah, so 7 3/4 that way. So I want to have it this way around first, and I'm going to cut it to 7 3/4 inches. So I'm only trimming off a tiny little piece, and then I'm going to spin it round, and I'm going to cut it at 5.5 inches, and I'm going to spin it round again to 5.5 inches. Now the reason why I'm spinning it round rather than just sliding it across is because on this particular paper Andrea has created it so that it's got like a distressed edge on it, and I want to include that distressed edge even. So 5.5 inches again. Now at this point I would go and ink up all of the edges of the paper here, because as you can see, because I've trimmed it down, I've actually cut off some of this distressed edge here, so I would actually distress those edges. But now because I printed it on both sides, I can flip my paper over and it's decorated on both sides of it. Just for the sake of the lesson, the class, the tutorial, I'm not going to distress them. So if we open this up, we know that we've already put our hinges in place. Now as I said before, I've used the green because it complements the colour of the papers that I'm using. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach the page to the hinge, but what I would actually do first is I would actually just taper off these corners. If I can find my little scissors, there they are. And so for this top one here, you can see this, I'm just going to taper it off just slightly by cutting it at a slight angle. I'm going to do that at the top and at the bottom. And I would do that on all of them. Now, I can either attach the page on this side of the hinge so that it would sit on top there, or I could attach it by gluing it to the back, so therefore then the green bit excuse me, the green bit would then show on this front of the page. If I attach the page to the front of the hinge and turn it over, then this piece of card will show on the back edge of the page. Now what I did on mine again was I attached my pages to the front of the hinge so that when I flipped it over, the back of the hinge was showing onto the back of the page, and then I've added some rickrack on the top to just decorate it up a little, to just take away some of that plainness. On this one I'm going to attach the hinge so that it's on the front there, and so I would get my glue and just run it along that edge there, right on the edge of the hinge. Again, try and give you a close-up. So I've attached it right on the edge of the hinge, and then I'm going to attach some glue right on the edge of the paper. And then sit one on top of the other. Now I don't want to put my paper all the way down to the fold edge, because I need to be able to allow that hinge to fold over, and so if I put that edge of that paper right the way up to the hinge excuse me, it won't fold very well. Rid of that little bit of excess glue. And I also want to check at this point as well that it's sat equally height wise onto the page, so I can see it probably needs to go up just a touch. Glue's already set, but you can check that you've got an equal gap at the top and at the bottom and that it is all nice and square. Then with this little hinge, this is where now you will attach your tags. So you could cut one of these out, make sure that it's the same width as the actual hinge itself, because otherwise it'll overlap onto the other side of the hinge. But you could attach this to a firmer piece of card if you want, so that it gives it some support. So you could attach the tags to that narrow hinge. Also within the kit there are a couple of pockets, so you could actually make these pockets up and attach those to the smaller hinge as well, so that you've got something again of a little bit of interest. But again, I would taper off just slightly the top and bottom of each of those hinges, so that when it adheres to the actual item itself, you haven't got this corner, this right angled corner of the hinge poking out, so that it could get caught on. Now that is the basics of this particular journal. Just one other thing to cover with you, and that's the page that makes the pockets. And so I've cut 2 pieces out here. Now for this piece, instead of printing it on front and back, I just printed it on the front, so that the back side of the paper is actually left plain, because it's going to form the inside of the pocket. And so what I did there was I actually joined excuse me, the 2 pieces together by putting a thin line of glue down each of the long sides and across the bottom edge. Again, if you're using a different paper to me and it's directional, you will need to just have a think of that. And there, that sits on top of there. It's got a slight overhang there, so I'll just trim that down a little. Then with a circle punch, and again I would just distress all these edges again. Just put a thumb hole. That hit me on my nose. Did you see it spring up? Oh dear. I can't believe it hit me on my nose. So I've now got a thumb hole. It's made me chuckle. Come on, in you go. So it's now got a thumb hole to be able to put something within there. Oh dear. So I've got my swing tabs will go on that one. So I need to just taper off this corner again. Only on camera, eh? It's a pity I didn't film that bit and put it in slow motion. That would have been quite funny to have watched that in slow-mo. Okay, so I'm going to flip that hinge over. I'm going to put a line of glue along the edge of the hinge, and I'm going to put a line of glue along the edge of the page. And then sit one on top of the other, but again make sure that I don't go up to the right the way up to the edge of the crease line, and also make sure that my pages are lined up with pages that are there previously, so that they're all nice and square. And so what I did with mine was I did a double-sided page, then I did the tags, then I did a pocket, then I did a single page, then I did the tags, and then I did the pocket. I also, when it came to the outside, I cut 2 pieces of card to put onto the spine. So I used some mirror card first of all, and then some of the green card that I used for my hinges. And so I attached the gold card on first and then the green card on top of that. Once I'd done that, excuse me, I then punched a hole using my crocodile, and I put a metal eyelet in there, which I then attached a bulb pin to, and then the ring with the tassel onto it. So if I show you through the finished thing, because that's all I'm going to show you for how to make the actual file folder itself. As I say, the decoration side I'm going to leave entirely up to you. So as you can see here, I covered it in my paper, and the paper matches the actual pages, so it just ties it all together a little bit. Put some decoration on the front. Then when I opened it up, excuse me, I got the background paper on again. I attached a pocket. Now it could just be a single strip, or you could actually hinge those strips to make the pocket so that it's got a little bit more depth. And then I inserted some things inside of the pocket. I'd got the single page. I then have got the tags. I've then got the pocket page, and I cut a piece of card that slipped easily in and out of the actual pocket itself, and put a punched image on there to act as a tab. Then I'd got the single page again, and again I've just used some of the images from out of the kit, attached, double layered them onto card so that I could just paper clip that in place so that it adds as a little bit of a decorative element. Did the tags again, and then did the pocket page. And then on the back, I put the paper again on the background of the cover. I then attached a pocket onto there, and for the actual pocket itself, I cut it so that it had got a little tab on it, so that again it matches in with the tab of the file folder, and then attached a postcard on the front of that pocket. Excuse me. And attached it just at the top and the bottom so that I could slide something underneath it. And then I made a separate little journal book to sit inside that big pocket. What I needed to watch with this back pocket is the actual width of it, so that again it doesn't encroach into this area, so that when the journal itself is closed, or the mini album, then that pocket doesn't extend into this space here on the back. So the actual measurement that I did was, and again this will depend on your own file folder size, so again, yeah, it measures the same as the page, so I did it just fractionally shorter than 7 3/4 inches, and I did it with a hinge as well, so this pocket was actually hinged on the sides and on the bottom, so that it could take the depth of the actual journal itself. And then, as I say, if you want to add a pocket on the back, then you could do that too. So now it's over to you to go about decorating this little folder, which we've made into a little mini album. And as you can see, it's really quite quick and easy to do. So that's why I thought just put a few pages in. If your kids are grown up and left home, it might be just you and your husband at home, or just you on your own, but you still want to add some pictures in there. You don't always need a big, tons of pages kind of journal or album, but it was something that you could make quickly as a present. It's small enough to just put small family photographs and memories in there. But it's really quite quick and easy to do. And then, of course, you could do one for each year. So one of the things that I thought about doing on mine was I thought about putting the year on here. but also putting it on the spine as well. So then if I do a collection of them, I could have 2019 and 2020, and it would look quite nice to be able to just pull out a small album and flip right the way through it. Okay, the last thing that I said that I would do is I'll show you the page of my instructions so that you can put it on pause and just make a note for yourself. And so here's the set of instructions that I've written so that you can now pause it and you can make your own notes. I made a boo-boo. I wrote the wrong measurements down, so I actually had to stick another little piece of paper on top to just rectify it. So I'm hoping that you can all read that okay. You can read my writing. So hopefully you've put that on pause, just made a few notes of your own. And I hope that you enjoy creating your little mini album stroke journal to use for this Christmas, or as a gift, or as a future Christmas mini album. Maybe even you want to use it for something completely different. What about a wedding album? That'd be quite nice, wouldn't it? Just a little bit of thought there for you. Okay, enjoy, and I'll see you all again soon. Bye for now.